Hello, everyone. Welcome to our security brief webinar. This is Telling the Microsoft Zero Trust Security Story, a blueprint for partner success. This is a joint webinar presented by Sherweb and our wonderful collaborators and partners, Aegis Innovators. Now, who might that be exactly? Well, I'm Henry. I am the cybersecurity product marketing manager here at Sherweb. And with us today are two guests, Oscar Rodriguez, who is CEO and founder of Aegis Innovators, and Reza Palizban, president and co-founder of Aegis Innovators. Not to put too fine a point to it, but their superpower is zero trust security. But I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself here. So, who are Aegis Innovators, and why is it good for us to listen to what they have to say? Well, for starters, Aegis Innovators, they are modern workplace consultants from Southern California. They're modern workplace consultants, and they were really early and extremely successful adopters of the Zero Trust framework. And when I say successful, that means that they've become experts at not just that, but also making it an integral part of the Microsoft offerings, and up to potentially doubling not just their own revenues on Microsoft premium SKUs, but helping everybody else as well. And so to that end, I can say, having worked with them personally for some time now, they are a model partner for Sherweb. They really exemplify most of all our pillars, our values. They have done really huge growth. They're a model of growth, and they're a very good model of collaboration of one MSP to another, one partner to another. And I'm delighted to be here with them. And these are reasons why we should all have a good listen to what they have to say today. Um, so, having said that preamble there, let's take a quick look at where we are right now. So we are very much going through a fourth industrial revolution where, honestly, the hyperconnectivity of the cloud has reached making everybody able to do global business with pretty much everybody else. And because of that, the global GDP is pretty much exploding. However, with great opportunity comes great peril. And in our case, us as IT business owners or providers, well, the pandemic that we see happening, the other one is cybercrime, right? Because last year, cybercrime was a $4 trillion industry. This year is a $6 trillion industry. It's on track to become nearly an $11 trillion industry pretty soon. So basically, we're looking at a jump of just a little over 6% of global GDP being eaten up by cyber criminals, and it's going to jump to almost 10% soon. So looking at all this, what does that actually really mean for us? Well, for all businesses in particular, but all businesses in general, but us in particular. So, well, all businesses really, if we're going to survive, we're really going to have some serious digital transformation. We have to have this adaptation. And one of the key points to this adaptation is that we're going to have to be proactive in securing ourselves and securing our customers. And to that end, one of the elements here of the digital transformation is going to be implementing some sort of cybersecurity framework. And in our eyes, it's the zero trust framework that makes the most amount of sense. All journeys to success in business going forward is going to really involve rather heavily having a serious cybersecurity component to it, because if we're not securing ourselves, if we're not securing our customers, we're really not going to make it. It's as simple as that. However, that being said, there's no magic bullet. There's no one way of transforming yourself, and there's no real one way to securing yourself, even within the auspices of the zero trust framework. In fact, that's one of the reasons why it's a good framework to follow, because you have to follow a set of principles, and it's an iterative, progressive thing. So, looking at us, IT service providers, just looking at our evolution, we can see that it's tied to security going forward. Right? Almost all of us, I think, we started in some form of a break fix shop, and then we moved on to an MSP company that provided IT operations with some degree of security focus, but not much, because we're not security experts, at least not yet. But we're moving on to the point where we really have to have some serious cybersecurity focus, because, well, as I mentioned a few slides back, cybercriminals, cybercrime is a pandemic. and we have to have a security focus. And to that end, it's like I'm hearing from a lot of partners that really that they're trying to become MSSPs more and more often. And on the plus side, in this transformation, this means our margins have actually been increasing quite some bit. And if you take a look at like the estimates that we pulled up, you can see that our margins are growing from 20-40% all the way to much more. However, and again, opportunity comes with peril. And this means that just as we're earning more, the potential for cyber criminals eating more of lunch just grows as well. So we definitely have to transform to and secure ourselves and our customers to stop that from happening as best we can, because by doing so, we help ourselves and we help our customers as well. We help everybody, really. It's the scourge that everybody has to do their part to fix. So let's take a quick look then at just where we are in a more granular level. And with that, I'm going to hand this off to the capable hands good and Reza here.
Thank you. And thank you, Henry and Sherweb, for having us today. Sherweb has been a great partner, and we're really excited to share our insights about why Zero Trust and the Zero Trust concept is important to MSPs to adopt. We adopted it just 2 years ago, and that time flew by, and we're very happy that we did. It's positioned us well to take advantage of some of the opportunities in the marketplace, and we're evangelists of this, so we're really happy to share our story and what we've learned, and potentially work with some of you in the future to help you on your journeys to learn about Zero Trust. Now, as Henry laid out, the world is going through an economic transformation, and our digital world is at the center of it. And technology moves at an incredibly rapid pace, and that affects our customers and how we service them as technology pros. A fundamental transformation in security has been well underway, and I think you've all seen that. And the global pandemic just put all of us on this accelerated path and brought many of the toughest challenges right to the surface. The traditional network and security perimeter model has disappeared as where we work evolved to a mix of locations from remote to hybrid. No matter where workers are, access to a variety of tools on premises or in the cloud is essential to be able to easily collaborate with partners, with employees, and with customers. And on top of this, organizations are dealing with an increased volume of sophistication of threats. And we've all seen the headlines. And this new reality needs a modern and more dynamic approach that can keep up with this always changing threat environment. And that's where the Zero Trust approach to security is all about. So why secure the hybrid workforce? Well, people, data, and devices are everywhere. They're not just at a desk or in an office somewhere. Okay, we need to protect people where they are at. We need to provide remote access. We need to enable remote workers to securely access their apps they need from anywhere. And we need to secure the actual devices and the actual applications themselves. We need to enable BYOD and unified management across devices and apps. And we need to protect corporate resources. And we need to empower IT and the IT admins within a company to apply controls that protect endpoints without getting in the way of productivity. The whole thing about Zero Trust is this integration into productivity is always going to be prioritized. Security is a foundation, but business is all about productivity. So the opportunity for MSPs, to me, is the fact that 68% of business owners right now feel like cybersecurity risks are increasing. And the number of people in the global workforce has now exceeded 2 billion people, and 73% of passwords are duplicates, and 40% of passwords are eventually compromised. This is what's leading to this sense of, hey, we need to be more secure, and the results that you see in the marketplace today and those incredible numbers that Henry shared earlier as far as this explosion of cybercrime. So this new reality needs new principles. Okay, so we're going to talk about these foundations of Zero Trust and understand that Zero Trust is a concept that has been around, and Microsoft adopted it about 10 years ago. And if you're familiar with Gartner and Forrester, Forrester coined the term in 2009, zero trust, and they coined it first. So that's kind of been the industry terminology that you hear. It's another buzzword like digital transformation. So zero trust is another one of those buzzwords, but it's this cybersecurity, it's this modern cybersecurity approach and framework. And Microsoft adapted it in 2017. You may have remembered when Microsoft 365 launched. Microsoft 365 used to have these Office 365 SKUs, and all of a sudden you have these Microsoft 365 SKUs. And that's where really Microsoft started emphasizing security. And it's really zero trust was at the foundation and in their vision. So what we are here to do today is talk about that Microsoft story, but also SherWeb has a few great tools themselves that allow MSPs to offer modern security services. And Henry will touch upon that a little bit later in this webinar. These pillars, verify explicitly, least privileged access, and assume breach, they're very important to know. And so let's start with verify explicitly. And just think of it in a traditional LAN. If you log in using a successful username and password combination, it was assumed that was a safe login and it was trusted. So with zero trust, we're moving away from this trust assumption to explicit verification. So every time somebody is logging on, we need to treat that as being suspicious. We always authenticate based on available data points, including user identity, location, device health, service or workload, data classification, and the anomalies that might come along with it. The next piece is use least privileged access. Organizations should adopt a policy-based least privileged access model by limiting user access with just-in-time, or if you've heard of just enough access. It protects both data and productivity. The idea here is that you can limit the blast radius if a user gets compromised, limiting the hacker to what they can actually steal. We're moving away from the traditional model that everybody in an organization has access to all the folders on the file server. And then assume breach. We should always assume that every element of our systems can be breached. And by doing this, the idea is to minimize the blast radius for breaches and employ a security strategy to prevent lateral movement. And the Microsoft Zero Trust model is to provide rich telemetry and data in ways that can notify on high risk activity automatically. And it could also perform various tasks automatically if we program it. So it can be intelligent. And we will review a couple of those features in a few slides. Oscar will be reviewing those. So think of the rise in security operations and the spike of demand for cybersecurity analysts in the last decade. And I know Joseph Biden in the United States recently came out and brought all the tech companies together and put out there what a massive shortage of cybersecurity talent there is. Well, larger organizations have had the budget to hire the cybersecurity analysts and to develop these security operations, but smaller orgs have not. And Microsoft Zero Trust is an opportunity for MSPs to help fill that gap and provide new security services based on this more advanced and modern way of thinking. So, we don't just arrive at Zero Trust, like we mentioned earlier, it is this journey. And, everybody starts from a traditional place. And so what is traditional? Traditional is basically where most organizations sit today. And they're typically logging into their systems with on-prem identity, and there's limited visibility for device compliance and cloud. And there's usually a flat network of infrastructure that results in a broader risk exposure. So the next step, and what we really want to do, and what we're talking about today, is to get people and get your customers to this advanced stage. We just start. And that advanced stage is for organizations and the MSPs themselves to have this idea of what this modern zero trust security model is and start to educate the clients. And it's also get to hybrid identity. This is where Azure Active Directory comes in. Okay, so at minimum, we need to have a hybrid identity to get to this advanced stage. And we need to start managing devices and registering them in making sure all devices that are used within an organization are compliant to a certain set of policies. And this is where something like Microsoft Intune comes into play, and it's an important thing for MSPs to learn. We need to make sure networks are segmented, and we also need to have cloud threat protection, okay? Because everybody knows that there's so many different cloud tools out there. There's Dropbox and Box and Google. There's tools now within the Microsoft Zero Trust framework, and the specific tools, Microsoft Cloud App Security recently rebranded to Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps, that actually helps us protect the data that even goes into these third-party apps. This is an area that we need to start going into as MSPs and helping our clients, making sure that they can manage shadow IT and making sure their data isn't even infiltrated by malicious employees that might be wanting to steal important company data. So for your clients to get to this advanced stage, you as the MSP needs to help them get there, especially if your clients don't have an IT department or a limited one. You as the MSP can fill this gap in modern security by starting to get that telemetry from the environment and analyzing it using Microsoft Zero Trust model. We're going to be talking about that a lot, data and telemetry. And Microsoft has these amazing dashboards, and there's all these signals that come from within Office 365 and things that are happening that we can take and make sure that we educate our clients and are aware of the threat vectors that exist in the environment. So now I'm going to hand it over to my partner and our CEO, CTO, Oscar Rodriguez. He's going to tell you a little bit more about that optimal, where we're trying to get at. And Oscar, tell us a little bit about what does that optimal zero trust security model look like?
Sure, Reza. Thanks for the intro. Welcome everybody. And as Reza mentioned, these three options here, these three networks, the traditional, advanced, and optimal. The traditional, he already explained, it's your Active Directory with domain controllers. Advanced, this is more of a hybrid scenario where you can be Azure AD joined and Active Directory joined. And then the optimal is basically where we're talking about just being completely in the cloud. So this rapid response of how to get there, right? You're going from the traditional to advanced to optimal. It looks like what it means to you guys is what you're looking at is that the workstations would not be Active Directory joined. They would be Azure AD joined only, and that hybrid scenario would turn into Azure AD joined. And the workstations would then be logging in using their Azure AD credentials. So that's where it all starts. Your cloud identity is where it starts, by logging into your workstations with that cloud identity. With that, you get real-time analytics. So as users are logging in and they're doing things, or real-time analytics is being kicked into Azure, into your endpoint manager, or also previously known as Intune. And then also you're going to be able to gain access to your line of business applications through this Azure AD world. So that's the thing to keep in mind is optimal is cloud only. So you theoretically you're moving your domain controllers, you're shutting those down, you're moving DHCP and DNS over to the cloud or to your firewall or to some other place like that, and then from there you're moving forward into that cloud environment. Okay, and you're going to be able to make sure that the data access is decisions are governed by cloud security policies. So what that means is it's essentially when you're accessing the data, there's going to be conditional access policies that are governing your decisions or your what if statements of how to access that data. So data is secured and encrypted and tracked at that point. And so there's a lot of information here that you can go into, but basically the trust is where you maintain trust within your cloud environment. So you break the point of Active Directory and Azure AD Connect. So you take that off. You're now in cloud only mode. So let's see. So now we can move on to the next. So, okay, so securing, as we showed earlier, the changes on how and where we work requires a new set of principles. And that new security approach is zero trust. Implementing a zero trust security model is a journey, and so think of it. It's a mindset, right? So it's a journey of how do we get there. That should begin with setting a strong identity and endpoint foundation. So you got your identities and your endpoint foundations is the key factor, right? As we talked about going into the optimal mode, you have your workstations that are Azure AD joined, and then your identities you're using your Azure AD to log in. The identity and access management solutions and endpoint solutions that you design will enable organizations to verify users and devices explicitly with rich signals, such as device health and sign-in risk. This will allow you to make informed decisions using advanced conditional access policies. And we'll talk about those a little bit more in depth here shortly. So taken together, this integrated security approach helps ensure that only the right people are getting the right level access across your organization, elevating both security and end user productivity. So zero trust in action. Okay, so so we talk about blocking access and why would you want to block access? That's if a user's identity or device is compromised. So remember, we talked about being in the optimal mode. In the optimal mode, you're going to be able to say, you know what, let have that workstation. Is it compliant? Does it have a virus on it? Does it has it been infiltrated? Does it not have all the updates on it? So then you're going to be able to block all these things automatically based on that on that, and that's using conditional access. Or you can say, you know what, I'm going to block, or I'm just going to, instead of blocking, I'm going to just require MFA, just because it looks a little fishy. So the same thing with the dark web. You can receive alerts when your credentials have been compromised out in the dark web, and based on risk analysis, and if you've categorized that user as a high risk, then you can say, you know what, you're not logging in, or we're going to require you to use MFA. And then also with the Discover, you're going to be able to discover all your cloud apps and be able to access those same cloud apps through Azure Enterprise Registration, to be able to access those using the same MFA policies that you've already turned on. So protecting, you're going to discover and restrict and monitor privileged identities and their access to resources. And then along with biometrics, you're going to be able to eliminate passwords by using biometrics or PINs, and we'll talk more about that. So passwordless is a big thing nowadays, and it's a big term that a lot of people are talking about. And we're going to show you a good example of how that passwordless option works. So zero trust within Microsoft 365 is smart. Configure it to the same time and automatically take steps to protect your clients. So how does it all work? Okay, so this is where what we're calling smart MFA. When you combine MFA and endpoint intelligence, this becomes a big game changer for you guys. And so remember what I just said. So we're combining MFA with endpoint intelligence. So your endpoint, that's optimal, right? It's Azure AD joined. You combine MFA with that endpoint intelligence. And after the workstation goes through that modernization and joins Azure AD by being from hybrid, from the advanced mode into Azure AD join, when it tries to gain access to the system, it provides a compliance status. And so the compliance status then is using the conditional access policies in Endpoint Manager that you can use automatically. So you can either say, okay, block access or require MFA. You can also say, okay, once it's blocked, you can say, okay, I'm going to go back, remediate it, or I'm going to wipe it, or I'm going to do what I need to do to clean it up. And once it's clean, then it goes back into, and you can say, okay, allow, and now you can say, I want to enforce MFA at this point. Now that it's gone through a wipe, I'm going to enforce MFA and make sure that it's still okay, and then you're going to be able to access those resources. So this is an important slide because it tells you the path of how everything's going, right? So you're going from the endpoint through Azure AD, through conditional access policies, into your resources. And you're not only accessing, your Outlook or Teams or anything like that, it's also accessing your line of business application. That's important to understand that the LOBs are being able to access through Azure AD. So Microsoft Defender for Endpoint. And so Defender for Endpoint, everybody knows it as it comes free. I mean, the AV version comes free with every Windows 10. And what happens when you turn it on through the Zero Trust platform, you have the right licensing in, it turns it on, it gives you all kinds of different abilities of being able to do things. So why do this? And so for one, it's an enterprise grade protection. It's one of the number one rated and the endpoint protection systems out there. And so it's centrally managed. Also, all Azure AD devices are going to be managed, and the telemetry that it brings in from that device is not just protection. It also gives you telemetry like what apps that workstation's using, how much data is going. Let's say, for example, somebody's been using Facebook. It'll give you the telemetry of like how much data is going to Facebook and how much data is coming down from Facebook. So all that information now gets reported back into MCAS. Well, now it's got rebranded, but and then, of course, you're going to be able to discover vulnerabilities and misconfigurations in real time. So that's important to understand, right? So it's going to understand how to discover misconfigurations in real time. So if somebody goes in there and changes or adds an exception to a folder or something like that, it's going to discover that automatically for you, and then it's going to trigger that device to not be compliant. So what happens when the device is not compliant? They're going to either be blocked or they're going to be required to do MFA based on the conditional access policy that you select. So that's the important piece to understand. All that starts coming together, right? And then, of course, you're going to get expert level threat monitoring and analysis through the Security Center. There are many great reports here that you can produce and present to your customers. So these reports that I'm talking about is they're daily, they're weekly, they're monthly reports. They're great reports. So you're going to be able to put these reports together, send them in a PDF format or whatever you want to do, PowerPoint presentation or whatever you want to do to your client, and be able to show them, hey, these are all the apps that we discovered on your network. These are the people that are using Dropbox. These are the people that are using Facebook. These are the people. And so all these different reports are through that comes from that telemetry. And it's really, really rich, good. It brings you value to why you would need to do this with your customers and be able to provide something to them that shows them that, hey, this is cool stuff. This is really, it makes sense. With those alerts, you can create great playbooks too. So if you can, obviously everybody knows Power Apps and that kind of scenario. So you can use those playbooks to be able to generate things and remediate things at scale automatically. And of course, you're able to block access for sophisticated threats. So if something happens where you start seeing a pattern where it's going lateral from one PC to the next, to the next, to the next, you can create a playbook that'll block that and eliminate that sophisticated threat. So going forward here, Reza's going to has a great demo that he's going to come back online and show us how this passwordless thing that we talked about earlier on how it works. And it's a good demo. So Reza, you want to go ahead and take that?
Will do. Thank you, Oscar. So yes, passwordless. Well, first and foremost, any form of MFA is a huge step in the right direction as it helps protect against 99% of identity-based attacks. But not all MFA is created equal, as many of you have probably experienced. I mean, the first iterations of MFA, although secure, were a bit annoying and inconvenient. Having to go to an email to get a code on your phone, or if you're using the Authenticator app, is constantly buzzing every time you have to log in. Productivity and making a profit is always the biggest drivers to do business. So when security gets in the way, people get frustrated. And your customers obviously will get frustrated if you deploy a traditional MFA model. The beauty of passwordless is that it is the most secure form of MFA, and it is highly convenient. Now, obviously, when users aren't having to type in their password all the time, and they go to a phishing site and it's asking for a password, that should trigger something for them, right? It's going to be very easy to identify. Now, Microsoft's also on a mission to get every authentication attempt to be passwordless. So this is going to happen eventually. Passwordless is coming. You as an MSP might as well be an early adopter. And like Oscar said, I will be showing a demo of this shortly. But before we get to the demo, there are different modes of going passwordless. So you've probably heard of Windows Hello. The thing about Windows Hello is not all devices are enabled with Windows Hello. You have to have the right camera, and so not everybody. It's not easy to get an organization to be able to do passwordless through Windows Hello. So for today's demo, we're going to focus on the Authenticator app. And Oscar's going to show you a FIDO key. It's called the YubiKey. And FIDO2 is a protocol called Fast Identity Online. And now they're on their second iteration of that. So Oscar's going to show you that. So I'm going to go ahead now and jump into the demo. Let's hope the demo gods are with us here. And as you can see kind of there, those are the passwordless technologies, Microsoft Authenticator, Windows Hello we mentioned. And then there's also biometrics as well. Okay, demo time. All right, let me just stop presenting here. And now I'm going to share my desktop. Okay, so what you should be seeing my Samsung Note 10 on the right and a web browser on the left. Can everybody see that okay? All right, so what we're going to do is log into Office 365. Okay, and so keep an eye on my phone here. Look, I'm getting all kinds of people are saying yes. Okay, thanks, David. Oh, and by the way, David Megg from New Jersey, good friend of mine. I met at Sherweb Accelerate a few years ago. He said it in the chat. Dave, I want to say hi to you. Exactly, passwordless. Let's go ahead and go into office.com. You can see I've signed in before, so it's kind of remembered my username. And just to save us a little bit of time, I'm just going to sign in. And it's asking me, do I want to send a notification? So I'm just going to go ahead and hit yes. I don't have to enter my password. As you can see, there's nowhere to enter my password. Now watch my phone. You see the alert. It popped up. I clicked on it. And all I need to do is enter that number. Instead of entering my long, cumbersome password that I have, I'm just going to enter that number that I see. And I'm going to click on yes. And so I'm using a Samsung, and this also has an additional biometric requirement, as you can see. So I have to use my thumb one more time. And depending on the phone you have, that behavior might be a little bit different, but you can see there that enhances the overall security when you actually have to use your thumb on top of everything. And all that we did was super quick and easy. To me, this is much faster than having to type in my long password and much more secure. So that was a quick demo, and I'm going to hand it over to Oscar now, and he is going to do a demo on the YubiKey. Oscar, take it away.
Thanks, Reza. So Reza, what happens if I don't want to type in the number and do that whole MFA? Can I do it a different way? Yes, you can. And so one of the things that we do is we use the YubiKey. These are FIDO2 enabled, so fast identity online, right? So this is what it looks like. So it's the little YubiKey. It looks like a USB drive kind of thing, and you can see that little touch point right there. See that? It's not a biometric. This is a touch, so it's warm to the body. So it wants a physical body. There's this one that looks very similar, right? It's nothing different, but this one is biometric. So this one takes a little bit of time to be able to check. You got to put your finger on it and let it, figure out your biometrics, and then it lets you in. So the way it works, let me show you. Let me share my screen. Okay, everybody can see all my crazy icons. Okay, so I started an in private browsing session, right? So again, I'm going to use this one, which requires only a touch. And I'm doing this one because it's faster. So remember, the difference between a biometric and this one is the biometric takes a little bit longer. I got to keep my finger on it for a couple of seconds for it to recognize the biometric. So I'm just going to use this one, which is a touch. All I got to do is this. after I plug it in. So I'm not going to put in the key yet. I'm going to go to portal.office.com. Okay, everybody's seeing these screens. No problem, right? Now watch carefully. I'm not going to put in my username or password. Again, I'm going to say I'm not going to put in my username or password. How am I going to do that? I'm going to click on sign in options. I'm going to click on sign in with the security key. Now it's saying, okay, cool, put in your key. So I'm going to put in this same key into my USB. And so now it's asking me for my PIN, which that PIN is stored on that USB drive. Okay, so I'm going to put in my PIN. And now it's saying touch it. So that same little circle, all I'm going to do is I'm going to touch it. So there I touched it. Now look at what happened here. This is very critical here to understand us as IT guys, right? I now have registered this particular YubiKey with many IDs and many customers. And you can see that I can select, I can either log in as me, as into our demo site, which is Aegis Zero Trust, or I can log in as another ID called World Edge Tech at Aegis Zero Trust, same domain. Or I can log in as my normal regular ID as Aegis Innovators, or another demo account. So I can select, and again, remember, I haven't put in my username. I haven't typed anything. The only thing I typed in was my key, my PIN. So I'm going to select the Aegis Zero Trust, and then I'm going to hit OK. And you see, and now voila, I'm in. And so that's key to not even having to type anything in. I didn't need my Microsoft Authenticator. I didn't need any of that. All I needed was my YubiKey, which is really cool, these things. Really, really cool stuff. Hopefully
Awesome.
everybody got to see it.
That was beautiful. Thank you, Oscar. So I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint to let's give it a second to. All right. So does everybody see that okay? All right. Well, again, I'm going to recap the fact that Zero Trust is a journey, and it's not a product. It's this mindset, and it's this modern security framework. And my message is start educating the customers, because it takes time. It takes time it's a very complex thing that takes time for customers to start to wrap their minds around it. And then consider giving them a roadmap. And the beauty of Zero Trust, what we've seen is once we start down the path of talking to them about Zero Trust, there's a lot of other things that come along, a lot of other services that you end up selling to them. And you give them a technology roadmap with security as the foundation. We often sell things like VDI and Azure Virtual Desktop is one of the things that we do that is a natural, like upsell basically as we go along this journey of Zero Trust. So understand that Microsoft, it started with Microsoft 365, but Azure also has a ton of security features and products, and they have a theme called Azure Sentinel that comes there. We're not really going to go into that too much today, but this is where we start that journey as an MSP, is to learn Microsoft's security reference architecture. There's a lot of great links online to be able to kind of learn more about exactly how does this architecture work. What I want to talk about a little bit is a little bit about licensing. Okay, so Microsoft 365 has 3 premium SKUs. I think you're all familiar with Microsoft 365 Business Premium, Microsoft 365 E3, and Microsoft 365 E5. Okay, now all 3 of them have elements of Zero Trust in them, but what we recommend is for you to focus on learning the capabilities of the E3 and the E5. Okay. As you see, E3 has a solid foundation of security offerings, and it's covering identity access management, information protection, threat protection, and security management. Okay, so the Secure Score is an example of something that's more telemetry that lets you go in and understand what your organization, your customer, how well they're doing on various security measures, and gives you steps to be able to recommend to your customers other things they can do from a security standpoint. So I highly recommend, if you haven't checked out Microsoft Security Score for your clients, to go and look at that carefully. But really where it's at and where the focus of our talk today is that optimal, what Oscar was talking about earlier. What is that optimal? It's really about getting into E5. And the key thing to point out, and we were talking about earlier, and somebody also put it in the chat. I think somebody said, hey, to really go zero trust, you need to be authenticating with Azure Active Directory. And very specifically, you need to be authenticating to Azure Active Directory P2. Okay, that's where a lot of the capabilities of the conditional access, the various ways of every time you authenticate, the system is looking at the device or it's looking at the data or the location or all these different things to determine if that user is a safe authentication or not. And then the other key one to really understand on the E5, and Oscar talked about at depth, was Microsoft Defender for Endpoint. And I mentioned a little bit earlier Microsoft Defender. Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps. That's another very important one. That these are the things that now you're getting into the full zero trust, and why we highly recommend E5. And you know, our advice to selling Microsoft 365 E5 is to sell it to as many clients as possible and to as many people within the organizations. Now, this is a big paradigm shift that we had to go through. When Microsoft told, our average SKU was, I think, $15 a user when we started this 2 years ago. Now we're $31. We've more than doubled. And at that time when Microsoft came to us and said, hey, this is what you should be doing, and we've been a managed partner, and they said focus on E5 and sell this $57 SKU. I mean, it was like mind blown, right? Like, how are SMB customers going to afford this? We chose to listen to Microsoft and didn't get stuck with this mindset of they're not going to have budget, because as I mentioned earlier, with the amount of threats that are happening and the amount of concerns, when customers understand the value of the licensing and they understand what it comes with, they will buy it. So you will never learn unless you try. Okay, like I said, don't assume that your customers won't pay. And you can mix and match licensing, understanding, and I'll give you an example, is if you have a CEO or a CFO or somebody really important, something that we call a privileged administrator, even IT, accounting department, just take one or two people, put them on E5 and start going through all the different things it can do and start working with these individual people within organizations. Maybe just even consider selling a monitoring service where you're monitoring just one or two people and their activities, because it is user based. To get all that rich telemetry we're talking about, you need to have the licensing as on an individual user basis. So if you try to get E5 to a complete, the whole company, I mean, unless everybody in that company is really have access to highly critical information, it might be overkill. So you have to be very strategic and mix and match your licensing. So this is our story. We've had a lot of success selling Microsoft 365 E5, and I'd be happy to share that even offline with many of the people that are on this call. We're, like we said, we're evangelists of this, but also understand that zero trust and modern security doesn't start or end with Microsoft. There's a lot of other platforms that are out there, and in fact, Henry at Sherweb has several great modern security services and tools that he'd like to share. So, Henry, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Reza. And thank you, Oscar, for all the substance that you brought to the table there. That's just excellent. So as Reza was just saying, as we've been saying throughout most of this, really, there's multiple different ways of getting to that optimal endpoint. And just it depends on where you are now and whether you've already started or not, or just even if, say, for example, you've already put together a practice that has other elements, and that's your approach, right? So in the absence of, say, wanting to take advantage of using or evangelizing Microsoft E5 or even E3, you can just break down the tasks that you're going to have to do in deploying or adopting a zero trust framework into its component parts, and then just match it to the specific cybersecurity solution. So I'm not going to go through this slide line by line. You can all read. I'll just highlight that, for example, the things that we've been talking about here: identity access and endpoint protection, and just looking for vulnerabilities and so on. It's all things that you can just put together. Say, put together your own package of solutions. Say, for example, for identity management in place of, say, Azure AD, you could look to LastPass as an example to get to identity management, basic identity management, doing MFAs and so on. You could do that with that. Or for endpoint protection, you could look to Bitdefender. Or if you want to do some vulnerability scanning and the like, you could look to Sherweb's own Office Protect as a possible way of getting into that. But all to say, the important point here is to really get started, and get started with, say, like, just specific critical privilege users, and just move on upwards and outwards, because it's as long as any improvement you've done to the security posture, especially in the zero trust framework, is already a good thing. And from there, as you're educating your customers, you can then expand that coverage and just expand that zero trust. So that's primarily it for well, that is it for everything substantive we have to say in this particular moment. So I'm going to suggest our next steps here for you guys. So if you're really just getting your feet wet with the zero trust framework, and you really want a solid technical briefing, and just actually develop your own plan, for your own roadmap for how to actually both devise deployment and design, and just figure out how to do this, please do contact Aegis Innovators at this email right here, Reza at Aegis Innovators. If you've already started and you're looking to expand your offering, or just change up the products that you use to deploy your cybersecurity framework, then please contact us at Sherweb, at partners@sherweb.com. We have nice little range of cybersecurity products, along with a lot of support personnel and pre-sales experts who can actually help you on this particular journey. So remember, as long as you get started, that's already a good thing. That's progress in the right direction. And with time, you and your customers will get to that optimal state, and you'll just do fantastically well for yourselves and for your customers. So with that, that's it for the substantive parts of this brief. Does anyone have questions or comments? Feel free to raise your hand, and we'll put you on camera to ask a question or just chat with us right now.
Muted, Reza.
All right, so there's a question from David Meg that says, how do we handle monitoring utilizing a SOC if we do not have the resources? So, okay, so I'll go ahead and answer that, David. So we've worked with different SOCs that actually have integrations with Microsoft Defender. So it's key to find those particular SOCs. There are SOC partners that you can find that will really help that process. And one of the things I recommend is also what Microsoft says is don't necessarily try to boil the ocean. Is develop some of those services yourself without being a full SOC, which means you don't need to be 24/7. Get to that advanced stage. That optimal stage is if you want to be an MSSP and provide 24/7, then that's a lot for somebody to do. And so until you develop the resources to get to that level, we would recommend bringing in a SOC partner that could work with you. And Oscar, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
I do, Reza. Thank you. And so, as far as the SOC services, you got to think of it as I answered it a little bit in the chat, but it depends on what level of where you're at in your journey, in your ZT journey. Because if you're at the optimal level, the question would be, and only you can answer this because only you know the customer itself intimately, but do you really need SOC services at that point? Because when you get to that optimal level, if there is a problem with the workstation where it becomes non-compliant, you're going to have a smart MFA policy in place that automatically disables that workstation and does not allow it to log in. So do you need a SOC service to do what? To let you know that that happened? Or so those are the type of questions I'm just proposing, right? I mean, I'm not, so I'm not trying to be confrontational, but it's things like that. Think of it in terms of like that. So do you actually need 24/7 SOC services for some of your clients? Some clients absolutely require it. I totally understand that. But when you're most clients that are optimal level, do you really need it when you're at that level? When you're let's say you're in the middle entry level in the advanced stages. So sure, you could use some, we have a package ourselves that we do ourselves that we monitor that, but it's not a 24/7 SOC service. It's more along the lines of an alert service that, we're looking at alerts and those alerts are coming to us and then we're trying to figure out why that happened. So, but if you're at the beginning stages of that, let's say you're on a business standard license or whatever it is for Office 365 or Microsoft 365, then at that point, Sherweb does have a package for you, that Office Protect. And so with Office Protect, it gives you that little piece of peace of mind. It says, hey, I have somebody logging in from, outside of the US, somewhere in Europe and in Russia. Those are the kind of alerts that Office Protect brings you. Great stuff. Good question.
Yeah, and then I think if there's a compliance situation that requires 24/7 monitoring, then yeah, obviously if you've got E5 in place and you're getting that rich telemetry, then you just find that SOC partner like a Red Canary. I'll throw out there Critical Insights. There's Critical Start. There's various. I mean, the expense can vary depending on the SOC partner you choose, but we see the need for both. So what Oscar's explaining is obviously it just depends on the maturity level, and if we don't need to bring in a SOC, then that's the beauty of the system, is that we can kind of use those automatic, we program it the way we want it to behave, to use those intelligent actions that work automatically to do it for us. Any other questions?
Yeah, Gary has a question that says, does going to virtual desktop mitigate the security concerns?
Great question. I know you're going to love this one, Oscar. I think that's right up your alley.
So, okay, with virtual desktop, so it depends on the version of virtual desktop, but I guess not really, because you got RDS, you got AVD, WVD, you got different scenarios out there that you can use. Azure AWS has its own workspace scenarios that you can also do. But assuming that you're in the AVD world, with AVD, you're able to use conditional access policies to be able to log into that AVD. So in theory, you already are applying those security concerns to that AVD world. And then at that point, that AVD can be configured with the endpoint manager, and then you're able to get the same telemetry that you are and the same protection that you are automatically with an AVD world. In the RDS world, it's treated a little bit different, because in the RDS world, it's more along the lines of your traditional terminal server world. With the traditional terminal server world, you got multiple people logging into one big server, and then that server is a Windows server. So then you can do it. I'm not saying that you can't. We have done it several times, but it's a little bit different and it's a little bit more work. But no, it does not get you away from any type of security concerns. It makes it a little easier, but not that much. Hopefully that answers your question. The other questions? So the thing to keep in mind is that as you're moving through this journey, it's a frame of mind, right? You want to sell the why, don't sell the price. So if a customer comes to you and says, hey, how much is E5? It's $57. Oh my God, I can't do that. I got 400 users. It'd be crazy. And what Reza was talking about is like, yes, it'd be crazy to put all 400 users on E5. And there are companies that do that, but But most companies don't, and we don't treat it that way. We say, okay, let's protect your core people. Let's protect your finance department. Let's protect your Cs, your CEOs, CFOs, all the Cs. And so all of those guys go on E5. Everybody else can go on E3, plus an add-on type of security add-on or something like that. And that reduces the price dramatically. But when we get asked that question of like, well, how much is E5? We don't answer that question. We always say, rather than answering the question, let's give you the value of what the zero trust platform is going to bring in. And we explain the zero trust platform. And then at the end of the day, it becomes more of a conversation of like, okay, well, how do we get this implemented rather than how much is this going to cost?
So with that, we've come to the end of our hour. But I see there's still questions coming in. If people want to still stay on and ask a few more questions about this topic, I'm sure we can carve out a few minutes to be sure. And I'll keep this going until everyone's had a chance to ask their questions and have them answered, because I see just one just popped up literally just now.
Yeah, I'll take that question. I think Pat's asking, where do you feel Microsoft 365 Business Premium fits? And it's a premium offering, and it's really great place to start for especially the small businesses. And Microsoft recently announced that they're providing a Microsoft Defender for Business. And from what I understand, it's going to be included in that premium SKU, whereas before you would have to get all kinds of different licensing to get it, and it was only available at Microsoft 365 E5. But understand that there's some limitations with Business Premium. So, example, Azure Active Directory is going to be Plan 1 and not Plan 2. As I mentioned earlier, Plan 2 is where it's the capabilities of conditional access, especially, and that conditional access gives us the ability to when we verify explicitly, check all these different places, and it's going to check the dark web. You're not going to get that with Business Premium. It's going to be more straightforward. You're going to get some conditional access capabilities, which is a great place to start. So for clients, that obviously have budgetary constraints or limitations, but are willing to invest in Business Premium, you could really start to get your feet wet. You're going to get access to Endpoint Manager or Intune. You're going to be able to start doing some information protection as well, but these are all more the basic plans. And once you get more advanced, you want to get to that optimal, you're going to have to eventually, you'll outgrow the Business Premium.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about the Business Premium is like what Reza said is you have it gives you it's a teaser, I call it. Is like it gives you just enough information of just enough access to certain tools, and it's yeah, I would say it's the entry level up to where you want to grow. But you can always do the add-ons as well on top of that.
Oh, I see Pat's comment there. That I agree. It would be great to have a group of partners that are focused on zero trust, Microsoft Zero Trust.
Oh, that'd be us.
Yeah, we're an open book, and I agree with Pat's comment there. It's like the more we come together, there's so many different aspects to it, and when we do implementations, there's so many different aspects. As sometimes we need partners that have a certain expertise in a certain server or a certain area of Microsoft 365, or a certain area of like somebody that needs to be an Active Directory expert. So we love to partner with other people that are zero trust focused, and it helps each other scale, especially on some of the projects. Some projects, as what we've learned is as we've become zero trust experts, our client size has more than doubled. Our average client used to be 30 or 50, now it's like almost 150. So we've grown into that mid-market, and we're growing to go to small enterprise. One thing to know is Microsoft has raised the game. They themselves are letting EAs expire for organizations between 1,000 and 3,000. So there's a huge opportunity for partners who are wanting to get into enterprise. And that's kind of where we're headed, is basically working with much bigger organizations. So for SMB, our focus is working with other partners. And to go to what Pat said, is we'd love to help empower those MSPs that are focused on zero trust and security, and just share ideas, and even work together on various projects. We love partnering.
Yep. As Rosa said, we're an open book. We're not shy. There's plenty of business out there for all of us to fit. So we're an open book.
No, that's good news from Gary.
Yeah, and that's great news, Gary, because if you're developing SKUs right now for as a zero trust platform for it to be in 22, I'd love to chat with you, because I think that's something that we've done already, and I'd like to see what your focus is and how it compares to what we have. I'll gladly have an open conversation with you about that. But yeah, that's the key factor, is to develop these SKUs or these packages, and you deploy these packages. And so that's one of the things that we've done, is we've automated that whole piece. We deploy the whole Intune zero trust platform, autopilot, you name it. We have 9 conditional access policies. We do all that. We deploy it in like less than an hour, because we have everything scripted and done so rapidly that we can just quickly do it. So
Yep.
it makes things really, really easy and fast.
Yeah, and Gary, there's proactive SKUs and reactive SKUs, and just, I mean, even something like backup, BDR, okay, and disaster recovery. Although it's reactive, it's a component of zero trust, and we come up with SKUs that are tied to that. The proactive model of zero trust is kind of being on top of everything and having these alerting and monitoring things as it's happening real time. So it's really fun to, put our heads together with other partners. And sometimes there's something that we're offering that you should be offering, or you're offering that we should be offering. And instead of reinventing the wheel, we oftentimes will partner and bring other partners in on various customers.
So maybe, hey Eddie, could you maybe open up the audio for everybody? Maybe somebody would love to speak rather than type.
Sure.
Yeah, thanks for your comments, Gary and Pat. Awesome. I'd love to talk further with you guys for sure. There's no question. And again, we've done several packages, and the beauty of it is that most licenses out there that everybody has, and I think Henry or Sherweb can confirm to this, is that almost everybody is somewhere in the standard or business premium licensing of Office 365. And in that scenario, how do you go from that to the zero trust platform? And you can take those pillars that we explained and go through that scenario and slowly upgrade those licenses, so it's not a big hit to your customers, but you can also do the add-ons as well to get there.
Yep, no, absolutely. There's different ways, as we've all said. There's different ways of getting there. The important thing is starting or continuing that journey if you've already started to get there. And also, like I said, it doesn't always have to be all E3 or all E5. If there's another way that you think works best for your particular situation or your particular verticals or customers, hey,
Yep.
we will find ways to actually make that work.
Yeah,
as long as you
we actually do that. Yeah, right.
Hey Oscar, this is Gary Mayo. How are you?
Hey Gary, good talking.
Yeah, I just wanted you to hear my voice. You can hear my voice, so when we talk, you'll know it's me.
There you go. All right, Gary. Thanks. Appreciate it.
We have a lot of not-for-profit customers, global customers.
Okay.
They take advantage of all the free licensing from Microsoft, but they also have a number of paid subscriptions, right? So,
yep.
And one of them is we've been really banging on their door about security. Even though we don't have a support contract for security with them, I look at their security all the time, right? Because I'm a delegated admin, and it's frightening.
It is frightening.
Absolutely,
I totally agree. Totally agree. We have several nonprofit clients as well, and the pricing for even for E5 is it's 2250. I mean, I'm
I
sorry,
know.
that's cheap. That is so
Yeah,
cheap.
yeah, it
It's like
is.
for E5, that's crazy cheap. And the thing is about those things is it's like you can, the way we do our platform, our zero trust packages, they're all group based. Everything becomes group based at the end of the day. So when they create a new user, all the IT guys are doing is adding those users to a certain group, and it creates that whole security platform just by adding them to the groups. So
Yeah,
it makes it very, very simple for them to manage going forward.
right. Well, we're trying to follow our own advice. We often,
Right.
like oftentimes, like the mechanic drives the worst car, like so.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, we're trying
Yeah.
to do. We're actually going through it the last month and a half, and our
Okay.
security engineer is, I've empowered him, with all my other executives that, hey, this
Right.
guy speaks for me. So, it starts at the top, right? So,
Yep.
this is the way we're going to do things. And uh, if I have to, I'll wipe your machines. Oh, you can't do that. Well, yeah, I can.
Yeah.
Um,
Exactly.
so we're putting everybody, in tune and cloud app security and
Oh, perfect. Love it.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we're not there yet, but I think you know we're small. We have I think 50 to 70 devices out in the field.
Okay.
But the threat landscape is broad enough, and with the kind of data that we're dealing with, it's HIPAA as well as CGIS government data. It's very important that security is top of mind.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we didn't even touch on MIP, right? The Microsoft Information Protection. I mean, you
Yes.
talk about that, and that's a whole nother ball of wax, right? So
Yeah.
that's just, yeah. I mean,
Yeah. I mean, there's
so that's why.
GDPR, all kinds of things that they need
Right,
to.
right. I mean, especially if you have HIPAA and you got to deal with GDPR, all those compliance policies, you can develop that package where it includes those
Yeah.
compliance settings, and then now you've got that package. You just simply deploy it very
Right.
fully,
That's
fully
what I would
exposed.
like to talk about because,
Yeah.
we could find some way to partner or, collaborate, whatever the case is. But
Mhm.
I really think that's beneficial. Because at the end of the day, the customer wins, we all win, right?
Absolutely,
Absolutely.
absolutely,
Yeah,
totally
that's
agree.
what I feel. So, okay, I won't
And
take any
Gary,
more of your time, but thank you.
we
Appreciate it.
no, no, this is fantastic, Gary. And we've developed some automation behind our deployment. So part of what happens is when you get into this world, there's opportunities for intellectual property and to build on this platform. Just like you see the Microsoft Power Platform in security, there's ways to do that, and we figured out a couple of ways to do that. So we're building actual products as well. But and that's part of it because we've gone through our own challenges and difficulties during deployments to learn that, okay, this could take a long time if I'm just going to follow, just using the back end and doing everything manually. So we have developed some automation that's really helpful. And back to the whole compliance piece, where the Microsoft 365 E5 really comes into play is it's got tremendous security, but it's got a bunch of compliance features as well.
Yeah, I like the templates where you can measure yourself up against the, your
Yes.
secure score, right?
Yep.
Forever chasing that.
Yeah,
Yeah, the compliance
yeah.
center, and then you
Yeah.
you map everything out, and then it
Yeah.
gives you a score of how you're doing based on the actual
Right.
compliance. Yes.
And that's where everybody yells at me, besides I'm always pushing compliance. And, of course my engineers are like, wow, but then I can't do this, I can't do that. And I'm like, we have to find a better way then. Because they're used to just like doing things, opening up ports and doing whatever they want to do just to get things done, right? But
Yeah.
it's a paradigm shift.
Yeah,
You have to think
yeah.
differently.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's
I agree with
definitely a
you.
different mindset. Yeah. So Dan posted a question. I don't know if Dan's still online or not. I haven't looked, but he posted a question about application guard and whether or not this goes along with the zero
Right.
trust approach. And Dan, to answer your question, yes. Your application guard is, in theory, we've played around quite a bit with application guard, and it depends on the version of or what you're planning on doing with application guard, because when you're dealing with application guard on the browser side of things, I, in particular, my personal feeling is I don't like it because it starts a whole new browser setting on the side, and then it launches that application, and then it keeps it all in that sandbox, outside of your normal solution. So it does slow down quite a bit of that whole thing. But nonetheless, it does work along the lines with your conditional access policies as well. So I mean, it's part of the whole zero trust. You can implement that as well. So hopefully that answered the question.
And Dan, you can. I think we've enabled audio, so you can come on
Can
audio
unmute.
if you. Yep, if you want to. He's saying is application guard the same as account guard? He was referencing account guard.
Oh, ooh, account guard.
Hi, yeah, can you hear me? Dan here.
Yeah, hey,
Hey,
Dan.
Dan.
Hey, gentlemen, thanks for the presentation. Love it. I've got some experience around these security policies, having implemented it for enterprise environments, and now I'm looking through my MSP to bring this level of security to small businesses. I, like you and the other gentlemen, have nonprofit clients as well. And so Microsoft has been promoting how nonprofits are being targeted right now, the way healthcare was a year or two back. And so Account Guard seems to be looks like some kind of service. I think it's a third party that does. It's my impression that it does some level of kind of what Office Protect does in terms of taking a look at what policies are set up and what needs to be set up to improve your secure score, for example. So I was just wondering if you guys had come across that, given that you're focused on security.
Yeah, no, I have not seen that. I've seen some references here and there over it, but I have not thrown myself
Yeah.
into it. I know that it does deal with some UB keys and some of that scenario as well. But I think it requires P2. Is that the right? Let me Google that real quick. But
I'm
I
not
think it
sure,
does.
but I will be exploring it for one of my larger nonprofits, and then I would like to explore partnership with you as well. So when I reach out to you, I can give you some feedback on what my learnings were with that.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I'm always open to all kinds of things because there's so much out there, right? I mean, but
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, we have a fairly large nonprofit organization under our belt as well, and they're doing really well with. They were on business. What were they on, Reza? Were they on standard or I forget what they were on? So they were on standard
Combination of
and
business standard and business premium.
yeah, and SharePoint licensing. So they were paying $4 or $2 or even free. They had a bunch of E1s as well, and we brought them all up to E5. So every single person on that platform is on E5.
Well, one great thing I learned from you today was, looking at the licensing as not everybody has to be on E5. I think for whatever reason, I wasn't looking through that lens, and I think it's a good point and helps scale that licensing cost. Because my larger customer, has been very open-minded to helping them stay secure as a result of my communicating to them what Microsoft has been announcing and all the the threat levels that we're aware of. So where I'm interested in working with you is in terms of future marketing efforts, taking a focus around zero trust perhaps, and then partnering with some of that implementation services.
Perfect.
Sounds great.
Love it.
Yeah, sounds great. And Dan, to your couple of your points. So first of all, this account guard, it might have to do with the new Microsoft Cloud for nonprofits. Are you familiar with that cloud?
I am.
They're like, okay, all right. And so we haven't necessarily worked with that. Do you know if this account guard is tied to that?
It seems to be separate, but it does seem to be announced around the same time. Where this new Microsoft nonprofit, I don't, it's not necessarily. I mean, it's still the same SKUs. I think it's more of like a marketing, a rebranded version of it, where they're announcing some of the add-ons that are now part of nonprofit, right? The additional services that are going to be included now.
Right, they've created this vertical bundle, this vertical focus, and trying to get you on there. I mean, it's yeah. So yeah, we haven't yet started working with the various different clouds, but that is part of Microsoft's vision and roadmap. So it's almost like its own different platform within the platform. So you're going away from all these traditional SKUs and just going into this more of a
Bundle.
cookie cutter scenario for that
Yeah.
vertical. So, but that's what that could be. And we, like Oscar said, we don't have that much experience with Account Guard, or don't have any
Well, what I
experience with
do
it. But
know about Account Guard is that it's something that was promoted even before the nonprofit piece, right? So they've used it for the healthcare segment that was being targeted by like these state agencies like Russia. So now they're expanding it to nonprofits.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And to your earlier point on the E5 licensing, what we've learned is once we've just started a few licenses within an organization, and then they start to see the value of it, and they see the protections, and we continually educate them on it, it just grows and it grows and it grows. So,
Yeah.
you can consider using it almost as like a test, like a pilot, where you bring a few people in, and you deploy the policies, you kind of see how it all works. And then once they get bought in, they'll end up buying more. So there's multiple ways of doing it. But what we've had more success with recently, honestly, is just going in with a full implementation, because some of the customers that have come our way have just already bought into the importance of doing security right away. For those customers, we go with a more aggressive approach. But the ones that are still like, security is important, but they're not fully getting it, you can take a more of a trial basis with them and bring in a few users.
Yeah. And where
I
I see the benefit of having that all in on the E5s is like from a CASB perspective, where you've got these remote workforces and
Right.
you can't use the firewall to do, logging of where they're going. You've got to use the endpoint itself to capture what sites are being visited. I think that's where you need that bundle, that E5 for everybody, if I'm not mistaken. Or maybe there's an add-on. I don't know.
Exactly.
There is an add-on that you can do. It'd be a couple of add-ons that you would need to turn on to be able to turn that on. But that's the important piece that you're capturing, right? You're capturing the right idea. Is like you protect that endpoint, you set it up with the right licensing. That endpoint now lives in Azure AD. Once it doesn't matter where that device is, it's beyond your firewall protection, right? So you can implement all those different Intune policies that get applied to those workstations. So, we do different packages, like we have a BYOD package, for example, for different customers that have that want to let those home users access the network with their home PC. It's not advisable because, you can't really Azure AD join a home PC. You could theoretically, but
Yeah.
most people aren't going to let you do that kind of thing to their home PC. But that's the danger is that allowing that piece to happen, because people's kids or whatever, the kid gets on the computer and starts using it and then blows up the computer, and then now all of a sudden everybody's SharePoint and Teams is infected.
Yeah.
So that's the danger of all that, of allowing that. So doing the right
That's where Azure Virtual Desktop comes into play as an upsell, is when the companies are coming in and really wanting to let people from their own home, use the device. We recommend against it, but sometimes customers will say, well, that's just how we want it. But we always have that discussion about, let's talk about sandboxing it in Azure Virtual Desktop and having this environment which is fully controlled by you. You don't have to offer a device, but when you layer zero trust with Azure Virtual Desktop, it's as safe as it gets. And that was the idea of Windows 365, is really that same idea that Microsoft came out with.
Yeah, definitely looking at that as well. And kind of trying to, I'm actually using it myself, kind of the eat my own dog food approach as far as Azure Virtual Desktop, and I'm using it from a Chrome device. So life has been difficult, but I'm trying to work through the challenges of like video redirect and audio redirect. But I think that's another discussion on a different topic.
Right.
Yeah. With Windows 365, the audio and video is kind of like, But on the AVD world, it seems to work a lot better. And we probably have our engineer online, or maybe not anymore. But Ashok, he's our expert with AVD, and he handles that piece really, really nicely. We have several clients on AVD where they're actually answering and using the team's audio, no problem whatsoever. So.
Really?
Yeah, but that's on the AVD side, not on the Windows 365 side. On the Windows 365 side, you're limited on what you can do.
Yeah, yeah.
So you're kind of, yeah.
This is Gary, guys. So part of the problem with us is that Microsoft now is coming out with so many different new packages
Yes,
and they overlap, right? They do.
absolutely. Yep.
And so at some point they're going to consolidate, which they always do that, right? They come out with a bunch of
Yes.
stuff, consolidate, and so
Mhm.
they're always repackaging. And that's the confusion for my customers because they read too, and they go online, they look, and
Yep.
Yeah.
especially the nonprofits, they're always looking for something for free, and they get all these crazy
Mhm.
emails from Microsoft. Hey, you can get this and get that. Half the time we tell them, you really don't want to do that. Let's just, we've already implemented Microsoft Dynamics for this global organization, and now we're trying to get them to think about security.
Right.
You know, but yeah, that's I think for us is the big thing is Microsoft is just sometimes doesn't make it easy.
They are consolidating, and when we took this journey on a couple years ago, when we were first sitting down with Microsoft, it was a little bit of an off-the-record kind of talk that we had with them. But the vision eventually is, I mean, it's going to be much more consolidated SKU. So I think like Office 365 E5, Office 365 E3, those could be things that go away, where it's just Microsoft 365 E3 and E5, and it's just now you see, and I think Sherweb has had some webinars about the new commerce platform, and you can see they're modernizing their licensing platforms, and that they're setting themselves up for more changes down the line. They've already increased the pricing. So that's the more consolidation. I mean, if I were to make a guess, I'd be a betting man. I would definitely bet on more consolidation and simplification. And you could see it with the way they're rebranding things. Everything is Microsoft Defender. It's been very confusing. We actually wrote a blog that's posted on Sherweb's website about the fact that Microsoft went from being Windows Defender to Microsoft Defender AV. Microsoft people are confused with what's the difference between Microsoft Defender for endpoint and Microsoft Defender AV. So, but Microsoft Defender is their Microsoft 365 and Microsoft Defender are the two platforms. If you want to think of them as platforms, as branding platforms, where everything else falls underneath. That's the direction they're going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's just they keep us guessing, I swear, but they keep raising the prices. So it's like you turn around and all of a sudden my storage bill goes up like 40%. I'm like, what the heck happened here? They changed everything.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of a love-hate relationship, right? Because without them, we wouldn't have a career, right?
Right.
But at the same time, they're killing us because they're just bringing in so much new stuff all the time.
Yeah.
So
yeah, we're all in. It's like family, right? You got to just find a way to deal with it. But
yeah,
exactly.
Right. Yeah.
So talking to folks like yourselves, we can share, experiences, and maybe we can shorten the path, from time to time, right?
Yeah.
Instead of recreating the wheel, and you guys have been burned on something. Well, we'll learn from you. You can learn from us.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
That's
Yeah.
survival of the fittest, right? So we have to just
Exactly.
hang together like like Naked and Afraid, like we're all together as a team,
There you go. Yep.
Well, we're soldiers. I think when Henry started this whole talk and talked about those numbers, if you think about it, cybercrime was less than 1% of global GDP just a few years ago. And by 2025, it's going to be 10%. I mean, we got to band together. I mean, this is like, it's an attack on our free society, our free way of working and living. And we need right now the trends are still going in the wrong direction. And what it is all the big corporations, they've implemented zero trust, or they're somewhere getting close to their optimal state. It's the mid-market and SMBs are really lagging behind right now, and that's why we need to kind of come together as an IT community. And that's what we're about, is sending this message out and trying to let people know we're an open book. Is like this is a massive economic and socioeconomic war we're going through, and a lot of people are affected by it. So to me, I'm very passionate about coming together and helping other people that have that same drive.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, we're heavy in the public safety realm, and it's that kind of data is very, very sensitive, right?
Right.
criminal data, people, victims, all that kind of stuff, right? And plus we do work for the New York State Department of Health, so we have all that HIPAA data. Security, it's amazing to me how little they talk about security. It's absolutely,
and that's why we have
scary.
to step in our role. We have to do a lot of education, not just because it's our business, but honestly for betterment of everybody. I mean, I'm up in Canada, right? And I watch the news, not obviously all the time, but security breaches. And one of the provinces just slightly to the east of us, their whole health network was down for days because of a ransomware attack. Like just imagine, your health network is down, not a hospital, like not a unit, an actual network is down for days during a pandemic.
That happened in San Diego as well. Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh yeah, it's not uncommon now. It's very common.
Right.
Well, which makes it kind of easier for us to have that conversation, right? So,
absolutely. I mean, we're to the point where we've developed they have to sign. If they decline security, they have to sign, and more.
That makes sense.
Releases us from liability because we're starting to see a lot of different IT companies getting sued because they didn't protect them as well as they should. And that's our due diligence in reality is like if you're an MSP and you got a all-in-one package, well then it is vague. It's because you can't really control on what people can click on and what they can't. But if so we're to the point where like even if we're getting a new client and they say, you know what, we want to do security next year, then call us next year.
Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah, I'm going to actually call our insurance company that we have our cyber policy with, and see if we can work with them. Because it's in their best interest that they're protected, that we're protected, and in keeping with what you just said. I never thought of that. That hey, we're fighting with these people to implement security, but if something goes wrong, who do you think they're going to sue?
Yep.
Well,
they're going to come right back to us.
Right. And then who does the bulk of the work of trying to clean it up?
Yeah, exactly.
We do. It's like so it's kind of like you're killing yourself by not turning on security.
Yeah, it should be part of the risk analysis. Like
Right.
Yeah, I agree.
And if I may suggest too, there are tools. There are proof points. Definitely one of them. Quick Help's another that actually help you really make this a digestible bit of information for your customers, right? It's like the security awareness training modules of these things. Let you do phishing attacks simulators. Excuse me.
Yeah.
They don't let you do attacks. Let me be clear.
Well, we do attacks. We attack all of our applications that are in production. We aggressively attack them to see if we can get in. My engineers don't know it. It's unscheduled. I know,
but you do it with your customers.
Company, but nobody else knows. And and then he just fires it off, and we gave him this super computer that can do thousands of all kinds of banging at the door different ways, and so we test our own stuff that way, and we found a number of vulnerabilities, thankfully, right? So that's how you do it, right? You test your own stuff, but
well, nowadays you got to test every single app because every single app becomes vulnerable because it's an entry into that network, through those apps.
I know.
So
I know.
Anyway,
guys,
that's what SolarWinds was, right?
This was incredibly helpful. I do appreciate your time and your expertise. I look forward to continuing our conversation. I don't know if I guess you have my email address, right? Because I joined.
Yes. Yeah. So as we're going to be sending out a version of this deck to everybody along with the recorded video. You're going to have to give our video editors a chance to just clean this up a little bit. But within 48 hours, that's our usual SLA for these things. You should have this in hand. And no, it's so as you can see, what should be on screen, both Reza's contact info and Sherweb's contact info is right here. So feel free, please contact us to continue this. We're only too happy to continue this and get us all on the same page to help secure everybody.
So Reza, that's the White House thing is what prompted me, and that came out.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
I sent it to my cyber engineer and I said, this is it. This is the rules. I want to know what our standards are for deployment and for production and all our dev environments. I want everything up to code, you know, so to speak. And so we've been concentrating on that since that came out. So
Yeah, and I mean, and I think it was Henry. Correct me if I'm wrong, but clause 3 in that, where specifically Biden announces that the U.S. government is formally adopting zero trust. So
Yeah.
he talks
Right.
about zero trust as the foundation. So
right.
that's where it's going to go. And so I think what you were saying to me, Henry, when we've been preparing for this webinar, is that once the U.S. government decides to go down a path, you can expect compliance to follow those same principles down
Oh,
the
yeah.
line. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, we're getting ahead of the curve here. We're already acting as though we have to do it, right? There's like,
right.
we need to do it. So, yeah. All right. Anyway, thanks again, guys. I'm
Thank
very
you.
chatty, so I
All
could
right,
be on
Gary.
Appreciate it.
for all
Yeah,
day.
No, it's great.
worries. Thanks.
Absolutely.
Thank you
Nice
for
to
your
talk to you,
time.
Gary.
Really do
Yeah,
appreciate it.
Yeah,
our
bye-bye.
pleasure.
And I think we still have a few more people on the line as well. If they want to have a conversation with us, no problem.
We definitely do, but I am mindful of other people's time. It's like we've got a solid. Yeah, we have a lot of people actually left. Is everyone still okay to keep on chatting? Just want to make sure before we let loose those floodgates.
Sure. I don't. I'm a big fan of.
Unfortunately, I have to drop to another call, but I
You see,
really
that's why
enjoyed.
I have to make sure.
Yeah. No worries. It's all good.
Oh,
Thank you,
this is
Henry.
great though. Appreciate people staying on this long, and really enjoyed being part of this. Thanks for having me, Henry, and everybody for your participation and your time as well.
No, thanks for being here. Thanks for your expertise, and thanks for being a very, very good workmate on this. This has been a fantastic collaboration.
Thanks
All
all.
right.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Take care.
All right. Bye, Rosa.